All right, welcome back everyone for another deep dive. You know, we always like to pick a really fascinating topic, and today it's all about money. But not just, the typical tips and tricks. We're going deeper this time.
Yeah, much deeper. We're going to be looking at how our minds are actually wired when it comes to wealth and success. We're using this book, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by Harv Eker.
Right, it's all about understanding the subconscious blueprint that's kind of running the show behind the scenes of our financial lives. Like, have you ever felt like no matter how hard you work or how much you learn about money, you just hit this invisible ceiling?
It's a common feeling, and Eker actually calls it the Loch Ness Monster disease. You hear about all these amazing profits, but you never seem to catch them yourself. He went through that himself, building businesses, putting in the effort, but just never quite hitting that consistent level of success he knew was possible.
And that struggle is what led him to a really profound realization. Someone told him, look, if you're not doing as well as you'd like, it simply means there's something you don't know. And that's when he really started to study the mindsets of truly wealthy people.
What he found is that there's this whole inner game of money that's just as important, if not more so, than the outer game.
Right. Like the outer game is all the practical stuff, right? Budgeting, investing, business strategies. But the inner game is all about your beliefs, your subconscious programming around money, your overall mindset.
Exactly. Eker compares it to being a chef. You can have the finest ingredients, the best kitchen equipment, but if you don't understand flavors, cooking techniques, the art of combining things, you won't consistently create amazing dishes. It's that deeper knowledge, that intuitive sense of how things work together that really separates the good from the great.
And that's what he's trying to unpack in this book, those core principles and beliefs that wealthy people operate from. He even says it's not enough to be in the right place at the right time. You have to be the right person in the right place at the right time. So who you are being in that moment is crucial.
Absolutely. And a fundamental idea here is that your financial reality is a result. Just like your health, your weight, even illness. These are all effects of underlying causes. He says it straight up. Money is a result. Wealth is a result. We live in a world of cause and effect.
So if we're struggling financially, the lack of money is just a symptom. There's something deeper going on, and that's what we need to address.
Right. And to understand how this all works, Eker introduces this idea of the process of manifestation. It's pretty straightforward. Your thoughts create your feelings drive your actions, and your actions ultimately produce your results.
Makes sense. So the big question then becomes, where do our thoughts about money even originate?
Well, Eker says a lot of it comes from our early programming, particularly what we heard growing up about money, wealth, and rich people. It's called verbal programming. All those little comments, those beliefs that were swirling around us as kids, they get absorbed into our subconscious minds.
It's like a sponge, soaking it all up. And he has this great example about a guy named Steven. Steven's mom always told him, rich people are greedy. Imagine hearing that over and over again throughout your childhood. Even if Steven consciously wanted to be wealthy, his subconscious now had this deep-seated belief that wealth equals being a bad person.
Right. So you have this inner conflict going on. Logically, Steven might want to be rich. But emotionally, he's been programmed to associate wealth with negativity. And as Eker says, when the subconscious mind has to choose between deeply rooted emotions and logic, emotions will almost always win.
So it's like there's this program running in the background that's sabotaging his efforts without him even realizing it.
Yeah.
So what do? Are we just stuck with these subconscious blueprints that we were given as kids?
Not at all. Eker says we can absolutely change them, and he lays out 4 key steps to make that happen. First, it starts with awareness. Just bringing those old messages you heard about money to the surface, actually acknowledging them.
Okay, awareness. And then what?
Then it's about understanding how those early messages have actually played out in your life, in your financial situation. Can you draw a direct line between what you heard as a kid and your financial reality today?
That's powerful. And the third step?
This one's big. It's called disassociation. This is where you start to separate yourself from those old beliefs, realizing that they're not necessarily true. They were installed, they were learned, they're not inherently you.
So it's like taking back your power in a way.
Exactly. And then the final step is reconditioning. This is where you actively start to replace those old beliefs with new, supportive ones. Eker even gives a whole steps for change, verbal programming process to guide you through this. There's a powerful affirmation involved that you can use to reinforce those new beliefs.
Do you remember what that affirmation is?
Oh, yeah. He says to say, what I heard about money isn't necessarily true. I choose to adopt new ways of thinking that support my happiness and success. And, say it with conviction. Maybe even put your hand over your heart as you're saying it to really drive it home.
It's like reprogramming your internal operating system. Okay, so we've got this verbal programming. But Eker also says there are a couple of other factors that shape our money blueprint, right?
Right. He talks about modeling. This is where we unconsciously pick up financial habits and behaviors from the people around us, especially our parents. We're watching them, and we're learning from their example, even if we don't realize it.
So if you grew up seeing your parents struggle with money or always stressed about bills, you might subconsciously adopt those same patterns without even thinking about it.
Exactly. And then there are specific incidents. These are those emotionally charged experiences we have around money, especially during our childhood. Those moments tend to leave a lasting impression. Eker shares a story about how he'd make money in construction, but then he'd always lose it. He realized this mirrored his father's boom and bust cycles in business. So even though he was trying to create a different outcome, he was unconsciously replicating what he had witnessed growing up.
It's like that pattern became his subconscious expectation.
And here's another interesting point. Even if you go to the opposite extreme of your parents financially, it can still be a form of their influence. Like if your motivation is driven by anger or resentment towards them, that can actually lead to self-sabotage down the road.
Because you're still operating from that same emotional charge.
Right. Eker says, if your motivation for acquiring money or success comes from a non-supportive root, like fear, anger, or the need to prove yourself, your money will never bring you happiness. And he even says that the desire for security often comes from a place of fear.
So it's not just about accumulating wealth. It's about the why behind it, the meaning we attach to it.
Exactly. Eker gives an example of how he and his wife had very different views on money. For her, it was about immediate pleasure, being able to buy things she enjoyed. But for him, it was more about creating freedom and options for the future. And those different interpretations can cause friction in a relationship for sure.
Yeah, it definitely highlights how personal our relationship with money is and how deeply ingrained those beliefs can be.
Yeah.
And all this leads back to this central idea of our money blueprint.
Right. It's that underlying program, that way of thinking and behaving around money that often operates below our conscious awareness. Like imagine you're building a house. You need a detailed blueprint to guide the construction, right? Our money blueprint is like that. It dictates the structure of our financial lives.
So for you listening right now, it's worth asking yourself, what is your money blueprint set for? Are you programmed for success, mediocrity, or are there patterns in your life that suggest a blueprint for struggle?
It's a question worth some honest reflection. And here's a powerful way to think about it. Eker says our money blueprint is like a thermostat for our financial success. It's constantly working to bring us back to its preset temperature no matter what we do.
So that explains why some people win the lottery and then end up right back where they started financially. Or why some people can bounce back from major setbacks much faster than others.
It all comes down to that thermostat setting. As Eker says, the only way to permanently change the temperature in the room is to reset the thermostat. In the same way, the only way to change your level of financial success permanently is to reset your financial thermostat.
And to do that, we need to understand the specific components of this blueprint, right? Eker calls them mind files.
Right. Think of them like little folders in your brain that contain specific pieces of information, beliefs, and past experiences, all related to money. And these files dictate your automatic responses in financial situations.
So if your mind files are full of limiting beliefs, even your best efforts, your most logical decisions, might still lead to poor financial outcomes.
Exactly. It's like having a faulty GPS system. You might be trying to get to a certain destination, but if your GPS is giving you bad directions, you're gonna end up somewhere else entirely. But on the flip side, people who naturally accumulate wealth, they have these mind files that consistently guide them toward wealth-generating decisions. It's just their normal way of thinking.
So how do we start upgrading those mind files? That's where part 2 of Secrets of the Millionaire Mind comes in. Eker introduces this idea of wealth files.
Yes. He's identified 17 distinct ways of thinking about money that are common among wealthy people, and he contrasts those with the thought patterns that tend to keep people stuck financially.
So by becoming aware of these differences, we can start to make conscious choices about which files we want to activate, which beliefs we want to strengthen.
And Eker's really clear that just intellectually understanding these principles isn't enough. You got to take action. Put these ideas into practice in your daily life to really make them stick.
He talks about the difference between doing habits and not doing habits, right?
Yeah. Right. Many of us have these ingrained habits of not doing the things that could actually move us forward financially. And the only way to change a not doing habit is to start doing something different.
Makes sense. All right, so let's dive into some of these 17 wealth files Eker lays out. The very first one is so powerful. He says, rich people believe I create my life. Poor people believe life happens to me.
It's all about ownership. Wealthy people see themselves as the architects of their financial reality. They take responsibility. While those who struggle tend to blame external factors, the economy, their boss, bad luck, or just make excuses for why they're not where they want to be.
And Eker's pretty blunt here. He says that blaming, justifying, and complaining are like slitting your financial throat.
Strong words, but it underscores how detrimental those thought patterns can be. Because when you're constantly giving your power away, you're not in a position to create change.
The second wealth file focuses on intention. Rich people play the money game to win. Poor people play the money game to not lose.
It's a completely different approach. Those with a scarcity mindset are just trying to survive, just trying to keep their heads above water. Their goals might be limited to just paying the bills each month.
Whereas wealthy people are playing a much bigger game. They're aiming for abundance, for financial freedom. They set their sights much higher.
Even the middle class, a lot of times they just aim for comfort, which is fine, but it's a very different goal than true wealth. It's like the difference between running a marathon just to finish versus running to win.
Eker has a great saying for this. If you shoot for the stars, you'll at least hit the moon.
Exactly. And to really embody this wealth file, he encourages you to declare, my goal is to become a millionaire and more.
He also has these Millionaire Mind actions, like writing down specific financial goals, both for your income and your net worth.
He even has one where he suggests you order a meal at a nice restaurant that's market price without asking how much it costs. Just a small symbolic act to step into that feeling of abundance.
The third wealth file gets into the level of commitment. Rich people are committed to being rich. Poor people want to be rich. And he says there's a big difference there.
Huge difference. Wanting something is just a wish. Committing to something means you're all in, no matter what. You're willing to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes.
He breaks it down into 3 levels, right? I want, I choose, and I commit.
Yeah. And he says, if you're not truly committed, chances are you won't achieve it. You'll just keep dancing around the edges. He even asks, are you willing to work long hours, sacrifice weekends, maybe even experience some discomfort to reach your financial goals? Because rich people are.
And he talks about this idea that sometimes people play small because they're actually afraid of success.
Yeah, it sounds counterintuitive, but it's true. Success comes with responsibility, with visibility. It can be scary for some people. And sometimes it's a feeling of unworthiness, like, who am I to be wealthy? But Eker makes a great point. He says, your life is not just about you. It's also about contributing to others.
It's about using your gifts to make a difference in the world. So playing small is actually a disservice, not just to yourself, but to everyone you could potentially impact.
Exactly. And that leads into the fourth wealth file, which is all about thinking big. Rich people think big. Poor people think small.
It's about expanding your vision, not limiting yourself. All right, the fifth wealth file is about where we focus our attention. Rich people focus on opportunities. Poor people focus on obstacles.
So true. Wealthy individuals tend to have a more optimistic outlook. They're always looking for potential growth, even in challenging situations, and they're willing to take calculated risks.
Whereas those who struggle tend to fixate on what could go wrong. They're more risk-averse, and they might get paralyzed by fear of failure.
Eker has this great principle, ready, fire, aim. He says sometimes it's better to just take action and adjust along the way than to overanalyze and never get started.
He tells that great story about wanting to open a dessert cafe and being told to get in the corridor. Just take any job in the industry to learn the ropes.
Right. He ended up being a busboy at a pie shop. And that seemingly unrelated experience actually led to his first major financial success through a chance encounter with these gravity guidance inversion boots.
It's a great example of how opportunity often comes in unexpected ways when you're willing to put yourself out there.
All right, the sixth wealth file can be a bit sensitive. It's about our attitude toward those who are already wealthy. Eker says, rich people admire other rich and successful people. Poor people resent rich and successful people.
Yeah, it's about examining those feelings of jealousy, envy, or even resentment that can sometimes come up.
Because if you're secretly judging or looking down on wealthy people, it's going to be very hard to become one yourself. You're sending out this mixed message to the universe.
He tells a story about initially judging his wealthy neighbors, but then getting to know them and realizing they were genuinely kind, generous people who were actively involved in philanthropy. He even talks about this amazing surgeon who does free surgeries in his spare time. So it's about challenging those assumptions we make about wealthy people.
The key principle here is bless that which you want.
Yeah, so powerful. All right, the 7th wealth file is about the company we keep. Rich people associate with positive, successful people. Poor people associate with negative or unsuccessful people.
You know the saying, birds of a feather flock together? Well, Eker says your income level is often a reflection of the average income of your 5 closest friends.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it really is about choosing your social circle wisely.
He says if you want to fly with the eagles, don't swim with the ducks.
All right, the 8th wealth file is all about self-promotion. Rich people are willing to promote themselves and their value. Poor people think negatively about selling and promotion.
So many people have this aversion to selling. They think it's sleazy or pushy. But Eker says that if you're not willing to promote yourself and the value you offer, you're really doing yourself a disservice.
Right, you have to be able to communicate what you bring to the table. Eker makes the point that leaders earn a heck of a lot more money than followers.
And it all comes down to believing in yourself and your value. When you truly believe in what you offer, promoting it becomes an act of service.
The 9th wealth file is about how we handle challenges. Rich people are bigger than their problems. Poor people are smaller than their problems.
This one's huge. The road to success is never a straight line. You're going to encounter obstacles. You're going to have setbacks. The key is how you respond to those challenges.
So it's not about trying to avoid problems altogether. It's about developing that inner resilience, that ability to overcome them.
Eker says, the secret to success is not to try to avoid or get rid of or shrink from your problems. The secret is to grow yourself so that you are bigger than any problem.
And he has this fun little reminder. When you're facing a big problem, shout, mini-me.
Just to remind yourself that you have the power within you to handle it.
Okay, the 10th wealth file might be a little uncomfortable for some people. It's about receiving. Yeah. Rich people are excellent receivers. Poor people are poor receivers.
Yeah, a lot of people struggle with this. It often comes from feeling unworthy. Like, who am I to deserve all this abundance? But Eker says your worthiness is not tied to your net worth. You can become wealthy whether you feel worthy or not, but it's certainly a more enjoyable experience when you believe you deserve it.
He has this great principle. If you say you're worthy, you are. If you say you're not worthy, you're not. Either way, you will live into your story.
It's about the power of our self-talk.
And he emphasizes the importance of the balance between giving and receiving. He says if you're not willing to receive, you're actually ripping off the people who want to give to you. It's like this abundance is flowing, and if you're closed off, it just goes elsewhere. He even uses this beautiful analogy of a rain puddle in the forest. The water will always find a place to collect.
The 11th wealth file is about how we choose to be compensated. Rich people choose to get paid based on results. Poor people choose to get paid based on time.
There's nothing wrong with the steady paycheck, but it inherently limits your earning potential.
Right, it creates a ceiling. Exactly. Eker says, never have a ceiling on your income. So he encourages people to explore opportunities where their income is tied to their performance, their results.
Like starting your own business, working on commission, things like that.
He even shares some advice his father gave him. You'll never get rich working on straight salary for someone else. If you're going to get a job, make sure you get paid on percentage. Otherwise, go work for yourself.
Words of wisdom. The 12th wealth file is about our thinking style. Rich people think both. Poor people think either.
People with a scarcity mindset tend to see the world as a place of limited options, where you have to choose one thing or the other. But wealthy people tend to think more expansively. They look for solutions where everyone benefits. The win-win scenario.
Eker gives a couple of examples, like negotiating with a supplier to find a mutually beneficial arrangement, or his own experience of searching for a vacation home that met all his criteria, instead of settling for something that only partially fit.
Right. And he also talks about that common desire to get rich doing what I love. He says that a both-hand mindset makes that much more achievable.
The 13th wealth file is all about focusing on the bigger picture. Rich people focus on their net worth. Poor people focus on their working income.
Earning a good income is great, but it's just one piece of the puzzle. Your net worth, which is the total value of what you own minus your debts, is a much more accurate measure of your overall financial health.
Eker says there are 4 main factors that contribute to net worth: your income, your savings, your investments, and simplifying, which is all about reducing your expenses.
He also mentions Parkinson's law, which states that expenses will always rise in direct proportion to income. So just making more money doesn't guarantee wealth if you're not managing your spending and investing wisely.
The 14th wealth file is all about money management. Rich people manage their money well. Poor people mismanage their money well.
Eker cites the book The Millionaire Next Door, which found that wealthy people are very good at managing their finances. And he says the habit of managing your money is actually more important than how much money you currently have.
It's like learning to handle a small ice cream cone without making a mess before you can be trusted with a bigger one.
Exactly. And he recommends some practical strategies like setting up a financial freedom account where you allocate a percentage of your income for long-term investing and a play account for guilt-free spending each month, just to reinforce that feeling of abundance.
The 15th wealth file is about shifting your perspective on how you generate income. Rich people have their money work hard for them. Poor people work hard for their money.
The ultimate goal, according to Eker, is to create financial freedom. And that means reaching a point where your passive income can cover your desired lifestyle.
Passive income is money that's not directly tied to your time. It's money that works for you while you sleep.
Right. It comes from things like investments or businesses that can operate without your constant direct involvement.
So he encourages people to explore those avenues, those opportunities where they can create passive income streams.
Okay, the 16th wealth file is about facing our fears. Eker says, rich people act in spite of fear. Poor people let fear stop them.
We all experience fear. It's a natural human emotion. But the difference is that wealthy and successful people don't let fear dictate their actions.
They act anyway. Eker says a true warrior can tame the cobra of fear.
And he emphasizes that real growth happens outside of our comfort zones. He even has this little equation: CZ equals WZ. Comfort zone equals wealth zone.
So the more you can practice pushing past your fears, the more you expand your potential for wealth.
And the 17th wealth file is all about continuous learning. Rich people are continuous learners. Poor people think they already know.
There's always more to learn, always room for growth. And Eker says that if you're not as successful as you'd like to be, it simply means there's something you don't know.
He says people with a scarcity mindset often resist new information. They think they have all the answers. But wealthy people are always seeking knowledge, always looking for ways to improve.
They're open to new ideas, new perspectives. Eker says every master was once a disaster, so it's about embracing that journey of learning and growth. He also says to get paid the best, you must be the best. So continuous improvement is key.
So to sum it all up, Eker's message is really about the importance of that inner work, that conscious effort to shift our mindset and reprogram those subconscious beliefs around money. He says the success order for wealthy people is be, do, have. First, you cultivate the right mindset, then you take action, and then the wealth naturally follows.
Right. It's not about waiting to have the money before you change your thinking. You've got to shift your beliefs first. And he's adamant that who you are, your mindset, is trainable. You can change it. He encourages everyone to actually do the exercises in the book to really solidify these principles.
So that's a great takeaway for our listeners. Which of these wealth files resonated most with you? Where do you see some of your own thought patterns aligning with maybe some of those less supportive beliefs we talked about?
And here's a question for you to ponder. Knowing what we now know about the power of our subconscious minds and these different ways of thinking that can either support or sabotage our financial success, what's one small action you can take today to start shifting your money blueprint in a more positive direction?
If you want to dive deeper into these principles, definitely check out Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by Harv Eker. It's full of great insights and actionable advice. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
See you next time.
See ya.